And it's on. Welcome everyone to the webinar on the preparations for the voting in the SCORP sessions in the August meeting. So
hello everyone. First of all, let us
and we can
introduce the speakers. All right. So the webinar is hosted by our General Assistant Jose, who welcomed you to the webinar. And then we also have our Development Assistant Ugana, who will present the SCORP camp regulations. And one of our co-regional assistants for Europe, who has been working on the Go SCORP regulations, Alba, who will hopefully be able to stay with us for the whole webinar, but we will see. And then we have me, Jessica, the current IFMSA SCORP director, and I will present the rest of the things. So we will start by just very briefly run through the timeline and the procedure behind the event. As you know, we are voting on sets of regulations and also some amendments. Oh, Alba, do you want to wave? No? All right. And also amendments for some documents that we adopted previously. We will vote on the SCORP regulations, the Go SCORP regulations, the SCORP camp regulations, and then amendments for the TNHRT regulations and the strategic plan, SCORP strategic plan 2016-2019. And these are all documents that will guide in how we work and what we can do and cannot do as IT members, but also for you as members. And we have been working on these documents during the summer and the spring. The SCORP regulations has been revised together with the whole international team. The Go SCORP regulations has had a small working group led by Alba to create the regulations, and also with the support from the SCORA exchanges. And the SCORP camp regulations are very much based on what was discussed during the March meeting, both in the small working group and the voting we had back then. So timeline for now is that we're having a webinar. In a week from now, the first deadline for input is ending. So until then, you can give input, which we might incorporate directly into the document. And after that, you can still give input, but then we will have to vote on each amendment separately. And you will have, we will have 4 days to just incorporate all the input that you've suggested. And then after that, you will be able to provide input until the day before the voting. And for the ones of you who will actually attend the August meeting, we will have a voting discussion on the 3rd of August, which is the second day of sessions. And that's also, sorry, it's 2 days before the voting. That's also the day when the deadline for amendments is set. And on the 5th of August, we will have the actual voting. We will have some, maybe if necessary, brief discussions before the voting, but we will try to keep it as short as possible. And on the same day, the online voting opens. It will be open for 2 days. And on the 11th of August, we hope that we will be able to share with you the results. All right, so, oh, by the way, I should also mention that in case you haven't seen it, on your right-hand side, you will see, oh, Michael, you will see a chat. If you have any questions, any comments, anything you want to say, feel free to write there, and we will see it only a couple of seconds later, and we will try to reply to any questions that you might have. In the end of the webinar, we will also have some time allocated for questions and to chat at any time you want to. All right, so we're going to get started first with the SCORP regulations. I will try to share my screen and hopefully it will work. So it should be something like this. I hope that you can see my screen now. So here we have the SCORP Standing Committee regulations. These regulations were first proposed in Taiwan in 2014, and it was done together with SCORA, SCOMI, and SCOF. It hasn't been updated since then, and we thought it was time for an update. And because there were a lot of things that we wanted to change, we just decided to propose it as a separate document instead of making amendments for everything we wanted to change, compared to the original document, which you can also find and compare them to if you want to. First of all, we have well, we've written the introduction. I don't think that's much to talk about. And the history, we have updated a little bit because it was not quite accurate, everything that was in the document last time. And these things are mostly unchanged. For the vision and mission, we have updated according to what we adopted during the March meeting, and the same goes for key terms. Strategic plan, we didn't have a strategic plan at the time when the document was adopted, so we have added some more information on how the strategic plan should be used. So we should base our annual working plan on the strategic plan, we should amend it, and we should revise it, and so on. And also for the annual working plan, we have written it to better match what actually happens in reality, which is that the SCORP director writes one annual working plan together with a team of officials, and that the members write one annual working plan each for their positions. And also, although it would be good to have indicators of success for each objective, we don't think that it will be realistic for a brand new international team to create a proper annual working plan with indicators and all those kind of things. So we're keeping it as a recommendation, but we don't think that this should take priority over other kind of work that needs to be done by the newly elected SCORP international team. We defined what it means to be a member, I think quite straightforward. Then we are introducing the idea of the international team. I don't think I need to talk much about this. The appointment of assistants is just what it has always been, and also according to the bylaws, I believe. And then we are running through the responsibilities of each of the positions within the international team. So I don't think I need to read every, but you are more than welcome to do so. So we were starting by the SCORP director, and we're trying to write according to our actual tasks what we need to do. And then for the liaison officer, for the regional assistants, we updated the information on development assistant quite a lot to better match reality for the past 2 years at least. And also added general assistant as one of the positions because it was previously not, or it did previously not have its own point within the regulations. And then we come to the section on monitoring and evaluation. So it says that we should at least twice a year have an official evaluation of the Standing Committee international team work, which can be done through the NMO report. Now, I know that many presidents don't feel like this is the best way maybe to carry out the Standing Committee reporting, so we might try to figure out something else, but at least it's done twice a year. It's all good. And also once a year, we should do an anonymous evaluation about the work of the international team. Previously, we said that it should be done twice a year. However, we know that we're sending a lot of forms to the members, and we believe that maybe the response rate will be higher if we try to keep down the number of forms. And then we also have internal evaluation. So where the rest of the international team, so the assistants, get to evaluate anonymously the work of the SCORP and LRP to receive feedback from the SCORP director. Then maybe a quite important point, I think, resignation, removal, missing in action. First, we have for SCORP and LRP. This is somehow regulated by the bylaws. But also, if we wish to resign, that we should inform everyone at least 2 weeks before. And when it comes to the other IT members, so the assistants, there is another procedure, which is that if an IT member fails to perform the task, their tasks according to the regulations and according to agreement with the SCORP team previously, they will first receive a formal warning from the director, and then if there is no improvement after 2 weeks, the director might choose to relieve the IT member from duty after communicating with the LRP and in case of RAs with the relevant RD. And if any member has doubts that an IT member is not performing their tasks as they should, they can submit a complaint for the SCORP to investigate the claim. The point number 4, I think, is about the Standing Committee on a national level. And previously, it was a rather long section saying how NORC should work, and we believe that it doesn't really work in practice because all the animals are quite different and the structures are different. So we try to keep it a bit broader. And we just said that we want someone to be in contact with us, and we will refer to that person as NORC, even if it has another name within the NMO. And also, we defined what we consider is a SCORP active NMO, which is they either have an org or they have SCORP-related projects and activities, which doesn't fall under another standing committee, although they don't call themselves SCORP active. And they have suggested some functions of the NORC, which you can read, which the NORC can carry out or not, as they wish. On IFMSA meetings, so we're pretty much saying that the responsibility is mainly on the SCORP director and setting some deadlines for call for input, as well as sharing the agenda and sharing the survival kit. And also that during the GA, we should be able to discuss the regulations or other documents when needed. And we should do evaluation after the meeting, share the materials, and also publish the follow-up kit no later than 2 months after the closure of the meeting, because we believe that is maybe realistic at the time, I hope. And during regional meetings, the responsibility is mainly on the regional assistant. We have outlined some deadlines also here. And also the responsibilities of the director, who should overview the work of. Right, and then for voting and decisions, we have tried to define the voting procedure, which is that all NMOs that are active in SCORP have voting rights. And if an NMO is not active in SCORP, but is planning to become active and wants to vote, we can grant them voting rights if we feel that it's appropriate. And each NMO has 1 vote, and automatically it will belong to the NORC, but the NORC can decide that someone else can vote in their stead. For example, if someone else is attending the General Assembly, or if they for some reason are not available to vote during the online meeting. And IT members are not allowed to vote. And then we also decided that we should add the online voting to the regulations, because it was not there before. We said there would only be voting at the General Assemblies, but we figured it worked quite well during the March meeting to also have the online voting, so we added this. And then just briefly how to call for a vote, and what is good for you to know is that any member with voting rights can call for a vote if there is anything you want to be voted upon. However, it has to be shared with all the NMOs and Standing Committee members at least 4 weeks prior to the General Assembly. And all the documents should be shared 2 weeks prior. And votes can be cast for amendments to these regulations or other regulations. And if it's only lingual, then it's fine. We don't need to vote about that. For the strategic plan or for proposing a new set of regulations, or if there is anything else in particular we want to vote about. And then we have section number 7, media and communication channels, which is briefly, we're just outlining what we actually have pretty much. And also to note that the IFMSA SCORP Facebook group is the only, should be the only open Facebook group on an international level, so we shouldn't have any regional Facebook groups and so on, and it's to avoid confusion, and it's a decision also by the executive board, so that all SNIC committees are following it, and regions, like everyone, right? It's pretty much it. And for publications, yeah, nothing super exciting, I think, that needs to be pointed out. And for corporate identity, it's what we have in the bylaws. Also for NMOs to remember, or for members to remember, that you also should follow the corporate identity guidelines. So for example, you may not use the IFMSA logo, and the SCORP logo should also always be used in the right colors and in its full size. So not only parts of the logo, and should be used together with your NMO logo, if not the IFMSA logo. And then we're coming to, I think, the last part. I think the numbering is maybe not completely correct. Anyhow, violations of the regulations, penalties, and complaints. The director is responsible for upholding the regulations, although everyone is responsible for respecting the regulations. And if any of us officials violate the regulations repetitively, we can get investigated by the subco. If the assistants violate, they will be investigated by the director. And then also violates, we will investigate that too. And lastly, IFMSA Executive Board, it's just, yeah, they oversee the work of us and make sure that we do a good job. That's pretty much it for the SCORP Standing Committee regulations. And I will leave, the floor to Alba. I was about to say, but I think Alba is not here anymore. So I will continue to talk. Alba is traveling, so unfortunately she couldn't stay with us for the whole webinar. It's all right, I will present in her stead, and we will talk about the SCORP regulations. Have there been any questions? Jose is the one keeping an eye on the chat box. No questions. All right. Good. So we have the SCORP regulations. And first of all, what is SCORP? And in case you don't know, SCORP is an umbrella platform for volunteering projects hosted by different NMOs, and it's a unilateral project. So an NMO decides to arrange something in their country, and they invite participants from other countries to come and participate. And the project should contain both some volunteering elements, but also capacity building activities. And it has previously been done in SCORP, but as far as we know, there have not been so much mainstreaming of the activities. So we created the regulations as mentioned. First of all, the first section is on the duties of the SCORP International team. I don't think I need to mention or highlight anything in particular here, only maybe that the SCORP IT we're also able to make exceptions in case we find it necessary in certain cases. And we're responsible for supporting and overviewing the process when any NMO wishes to host. And then we have proposal regulations, what a proposal looks like. So this might be a bit complicated. I really recommend you to read it. So the idea is that we will have 2 periods for proposals every term. So the first period is in February and the second period is in July. And if you wish to host a project between June and November, you have to apply in February. And if you want to host something in December to May, you should apply in July. And we have specified the requirements for what needs to be included. Also, the selection criteria and rating is explained in this part as well. So application form is pretty much the same as, or same, but a bit more extensive as the sub-regional training application form, because the SCORP should apply to be a sub-regional training in order to get IFMSA recognition, so that you can use the IFMSA logo and promote through our official channels and get certificates and all those kind of things. So you need to sign and stamp an application form, or the NMO president should do this, and then fill out an activity description form. So it's a motivation letter, OC composition, problem statement, and needs assessment. So why are we doing this project? Why is it necessary? Why is it good? What problem does it tackle? A general description of the project and what is happening. Target group, so both from like the volunteers side point of view, and also who we will be working with within the project. Objectives and expected outcomes of the SCORP project. And I think it's good if you also have success indicators. I don't know, it's not included here, but nonetheless. And then we would like to know some logistics, so date and location of the project, number of offered spots, we will come to that later, accommodation, transportation, fees, and what it includes, payment requirements for participants, so how they should pay and when they should pay, if payment upon arrival is acceptable, and those kind of things. And then have a look at the agenda, so the program and also the sessions. Since we said there should be capacity building activities, we expect that there will be a couple of sessions during the 2 weeks, or how many weeks there will be. We will talk more about that as well. Visa information, selection criteria for participants, evaluation follow-up, activity plan, sustainability and ethical implications, because these will be volunteering projects, and I think it's very nice when members want to volunteer, and it can do a lot of, or it can have a lot of like good impact. But also it's good to keep into consideration the negative impacts volunteering can have, like doing no harm and those kind of things. So we want you to discuss in the application how much you have considered these kind of things, contact information. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It should be sent both to me and to the Vice President for capacity building. All right, and then we have host selection. So host selection will be done by me and the Vice President. And more than one GoScorp can be conducted per year, so they won't be competing. We just want them to keep a minimum standard. And you can see here what aspects we will take into consideration, motivation, agenda, benefits, our aims, and so on. Try to we aim more to support you and not to say no, but rather how we can work together to improve. So on. Also have some regulations on how the promotion will be done, especially because we might have more than one GoScorp time, so we don't want them to compete in an unfair way against each other. So that's why we have a common promotion strategy. At the same time, of course, we want all the projects to be as visible as possible. Okay. And then we have regulations for the agenda. So you see that we should, all right, I will mention a bit later, but the length of the project should be 2 to 4 weeks. And every week there should be at least 5 working days related to the project. And there should be at least 4 hours per day related to some kind of active work, so not sessions, unless you're given sessions. And I think that's fine. And then there should also be some free time, so not 7 days a week. Right. So then for the capacity building, you can read here more the recommended topics and so on, but we want to have at least 6 hours of capacity building activities, which you should outline in the application. We want to have one upon arrival training day on the first day, just to make sure that all participants are on the same page. And at the end of the project, we would like for participants to have some kind of presentation. All right. And then we have the volunteering program. So here are some things we want for the hosting and host to keep in mind. I'm not going to read all of them, so you should read them. All right. So do's and don'ts in order to create sustainable, ethical, impactful projects. So it's important that we do things that actually benefit the communities and don't harm the communities, as I mentioned, and that we don't do projects just for our own sake because we want to or because we feel cool about it. Right. And then for social program, we want there to be a social program. Simply logistics. Moving on. Here you can read about the lodging and boarding, meals, fees. So the fee we want to not be higher than 200 euros per week, which should include meals and accommodation, and transportation for volunteering program and materials for activities, and if there are any other mandatory activities. And this is because we want the GoScorp to be as accessible as possible for as many members as possible. And we also think it would be very nice if the OC could offer a partially or fully covered spot, like one, for the SCORP camp, so that we can somehow promote, I would just read, which would be awarded to a promising first-time GoSCORP participant from any current or prospective IFMSA member country who might not be able to attend otherwise. All right. And then we have regulations for participants application. So, and we had this because we want to mainstream all the projects, right? So we have a timeline here, and the participants application should be open 12 weeks before the beginning of the first GoSCORP of that period. And it's because in case participants apply for several, then they should get their reply on time so that they know which one to go for and those kind of things, if that makes sense. If it didn't make sense, just ask. Right? And then we are outlining the application procedure, how to do this. And then we're talking about the selection criteria. And the selection should be done by members of the OC, of the NMO, and also the NORP of the NMO, preferably. And here you can see what things to take into consideration. And then we're talking about the selection procedure. And payment timeline and conditions. And do you want me to run through the application procedure maybe or selection criteria, or? Okay, I'll do it briefly. So for the application, you should apply directly to the GoSCORP OC through the contact details provided in the proposal. And you will fill out a standard application form, which will be the same regardless of which program you're applying for, and this will be provided to the OC by the SCORP IT also, so that the OCs, all the OCs will use similar application forms. And you will have to submit a photo because sometimes different organizations require it from the volunteers, and usually, okay, I didn't mention it, but usually GoSCORP projects are done together with other organizations. So for the volunteering activities, we do it in collaboration with other actors. Right, and then we should, the participant, the applicant should state in the application form if they're applying for any other GoSCORP activity during the same period, and this is for us to primarily select one person, each person once during the same period, unless there are extra spots. Okay. And the selection criteria will be that the participant has submitted the applicant has submitted their application on time, that they are motivated, that they have follow-up plans. So how are they going to use the knowledge from the GoSCORP? Because it doesn't end once the project ends, we hope. And we will also look a little bit on regional representation, gender representation, and we will keep into consideration how experienced each participant is within SCORP and volunteering, because there are pros and cons both with being experienced and being new. So we just want the NMOs to look at this, but not without saying that we should select anyone over the other. Rather, we would like to see a mixture of experience among participants, right? Okay. And then we have responsibilities and rights of participants. This is a bit long, so I don't know if I'm gonna read all of it, but mostly like just follow the things we have stated here, follow the instructions of the OC, make sure that you attend at least 80% as participant of the GoSCORP, and fill out forms that you receive from the OC and so on, behave in a respectful way, so on and so forth. If you need to cancel, you need to inform the OC. We have some refund regulations here. So before payment deadline, there will be a full refund minus international transfer taxes. Up to 3 weeks before the GoSCORP, no one receives any refund except for in extraordinary conditions where the OC can consider a refund based on their financial situation. And after the beginning of SCORP, there will be no refund in any case. And like, although we would like to provide refunds when something happens and someone cannot attend, we feel that we cannot force the OC to do so because it's difficult to make the finances work and it has to be financially sustainable. All right. Okay. So if they complete all their tasks, they will receive a certificate. And if they misbehave, I think we will come to that a bit later. Right. So when it comes to rights, if the SCORP is cancelled, they should receive reimbursement and be informed as early as possible. And as well as any modifications, they should be informed about as early as possible. Their dietary requirements should be taken into consideration. Of course, the hosting NMO should also respect any other needs that the participant has. They should receive an invitation letter if necessary, and of course, we will come to the OC responsibilities as well, I think, unless it's already outlined here. But in short, they should be treated the way they have been promised, kind of. Right? And then for evaluation, I don't think I need to run through this, but we're just saying that we should do evaluations. And also there should be a pre-evaluation so that we can assess changes during the activity. And the OC should submit a report after the event, also because it's required by the SRT regulations. And certification, as mentioned, will be provided by the SCORP director because it will be an SRT, so it will be done together with the EB. Good morning. And here we go to violation of regulations. So, well, missing deadlines, too bad, don't miss deadlines. And for the international team, we will be transparent and supportive, we hope. And if we are not transparent and supportive, then you can complain and we can try to explain what we have done, or the IT will explain why they have done what they have done. And hopefully there will be an agreement. And here we can also link back to the SCORP regulations that I mentioned. So if any IT member fail to complete their tasks, an investigation can be done by the SCORP director in case of regional assistance, or the SUPCO in case of the SCORP director. Right? And if a participant fails to respect the regulations, then the OC can terminate the participation during the project without any reimbursement. And if they don't pay and fulfill the deadlines and so on, then they can be denied participation as well. Also to note that the participants should reach the minimum level of language knowledge that the OC has previously stated. All right. And then very, very lastly, we have changes to the regulations, and changes to regulations will be done according to what I mentioned in the SCORP regulations, essentially. All right, that's it. Finally, you don't need to listen to me anymore for a couple of minutes. I'm leaving the floor to Ogana.
Hi. Okay, so I'm going to talk about SCORP Camp regulations. I'm going to attempt to share my screen now. Give me 1 second. I hope you can see that. Yes or no? I'm not sure if it's been shown.
You're screen sharing.
I am?
Yep.
Yay! Okay, cool. Whoops. Okay. Basically, some background on the SCORP Camp regulations. So for a while now, as an international team, we felt like we needed SCORP Camp regulations, just because SCORP Camp is such like an integral part of what we do as SCORP. It's if you don't know what SCORP Camp is, it's IFMSA's biggest summer camp on human rights and peace, and it happens once a year. So at the March meeting in Montenegro, we created this small working group to discuss the future of SCORP Camp, because when SCORP Camp was first created, there wasn't that many SRTs or training like events which were related to human rights and peace. But nowadays there's quite a few like teenage RTs being done and other things being done. And we also felt just what was our plan, our long-term goal with SCORP Camp? How can we keep improving it? How can we ensure that, you know, we maintain the quality of it, and that there's ultimately like a continued place for it in terms of in the structure of IFMSA. So we developed these SCORP Camp regulations based on that, and I'm going through them now. And as you can see, so in the regulations, we set out clearly what the to define what SCORP Camp is. We created a mission statement, which is what we created at the March meeting in Montenegro. And the mission statement is kind of simple. It just says the mission of SCORP Camp is to build the capacity of medical students in the field of human rights and peace issues. And then we have a list of objectives as well. I won't read all of them out, but for instance, to improve capacity building skills for medical students within IFMSA, to create kind of like a community of motivated medical students showing a vision on healthcare, human rights and peace issues, and to equip participants with knowledge and skills and attitudes regarding human rights. Some of the kind of key issues within the SCORP Camp regulations, which you might be interested in, is point 2, which is the date and time required of SCORP Camp, because for a few years now we've kind of not known, we weren't really sure how rigid to be with when we hold SCORP Camp, and whether it should be held once a year, twice a year, whether it should be held in the same place every year, whether it should like rotate in regions. But what we've said in the SCORP Camp regulations is that it should be in mid to late August, which is when usually SCORP Camp is. But this year, for instance, in Colombia, it was in July. And that you have to apply for it. Like an NMO has to like, you know, apply for it, and then the IT will select a host. But we will we will try and incorporate regional representation into selection criteria. That's kind of the crux of what we said in the regulations. We've outlined how many days it should consist for, which is 4 working days, in addition to the arrival and departure days. And we outlined the role of the SCORP international team. I think what's different about SCORP Camp compared to like a normal SRT is that although NMO will host it, it is very much a branded SCORP Central Committee event as well. Therefore, even though it's been hosted by an NMO, the SCORP IT and particularly like SCORP director should be heavily involved in all aspects of it as well. And we said that it's important that the SCORP director is always present, unless there's like, you know, a major emergency or something, and that as many as the SCORP international team attend the event as well. We have the timeline for selection process for SCORP Camp. Right now, we've said that the call should be released on the 1st of December, and that SCORP IT should select the host by the 1st of February. That is up for debate, and I would be interested if people want to like discuss or amend that, because we were, you know, trying to think about what's a reasonable date for this, because it takes a lot of preparation for SCORP Camp. If we have a SCORP Camp in August and we select people in February, that means they only have like 5 months, I think, to prepare for the SCORP Camp. And is that enough time? In the past, we have done it that way, and so far it has worked out. But there's always been a sense that it's quite pressured, that time period. But at the same time, obviously a new SCORP international team is created in October. So is it feasible for us to make all the preparations to release a call earlier than December? So that's why we just kept it the same. What else? So talk about selection criteria. I purposely didn't include exactly what the selection criteria was because it's changed from year to year, and I don't know whether in the regulations we should set out directly what the criteria should be. And the only thing we've mentioned is that there should be regional representation, and I've left that vague because we've done it in different ways in different years. Exactly what we mean by regional representation, but typically there should be some things in the selection criteria which means that countries or regions which have not hosted SCORP Camp before should have like more weighting in the application. Yeah. And what else? We also outlined the role of the hosting organization, hosting organizing committee, what their roles are, and yeah, and then the requirements of the workshop. One of the things which of interest is that we've said that every SCORP camp should have a TNT and a training, a TNHRT, which is training new human rights trainers. And we also said that the other workshops should also be related to human rights, because in the past we've had workshops which have not been related to human rights. We've had like IPET, but again, when we're trying to create these regulations, our key aim is that it's different to any kind of like normal SRT. So in SRTs usually you get like a different range of workshops, but this is like SCORP camp and it should stay, SCORP related, which is like human rights and peace. So we've clearly set out in the regulations that all workshops apart from TNT should be human rights related. And we've also set out that new SCORP related workshops should be, should, if possibly, be like launched at SCORP camp. Yes. Another thing we've added to regulations is about SCORP activity fairs or SCORP activity showcase. One of the things that we discussed during the small working group in March is that, again, we feel like people come to SCORP camp because it's like a SCORP event, and it's different to any other kind of like SRT in the summer. So we thought that there should be more SCORP elements within SCORP camp. So one of those things that we talked about was having a SCORP activities fair or activity showcase within the SCORP camp as well. I think I've talked for longer than I was supposed to talk, so I'm going to stop there. Yes, that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Agana. Sorry, I muted you now. Okay, so we are coming towards an end. I will just very briefly run through the few amendments that we have so far proposed for the TNHRT regulations and the strategic plan. So the amendments, as mentioned, can be, or amendments in general, as mentioned, can be proposed until 2 days before the actual voting. So far, we have no regulations. I have proposed 2 amendments. The first one is that the trainers should be shared. The name of the trainers should be shared with the SCORP director 1 month prior to the start of the training, so that we can get in touch with. Oh, sorry, I should share my screen. All right. No. There. Okay, so that we would like to have the names of the trainers 1 month before so that we can start to discuss with them and support them if they need it. And 2 weeks before, we should have the final agenda so that we know what is happening. And this is usually how it works in reality. All right, and the second amendment is that we are adding, or we would like to add, an article saying that if deemed necessary by the SCORP International Team, the trainers or the organizing committee, at least one online meeting should be arranged between the affected parties. And this is just to make sure that, sorry, I was told I was offline, but I think I'm not offline. I hope I'm not offline. All right, so this is just to make sure that it will be done in case it's needed, and that no one can say that they don't want to, right? And it's usually also something we do. And in addition to these, we might submit an additional or some additional amendments on the responsibility of the trainers during the follow-up process, because we know that sometimes during the follow-up or after a TNHRT, everyone kind of disappears and then we don't properly follow up on what has happened. So we might submit an amendment on how the trainers should follow up with their participants. All right, and when it comes to the strategic plan, we have 3 amendments, but I put them in one form. I hope it's okay because they are all pretty simple. So the first amendment is simply that we are adding the word in every region, because that's what we mean, I imagine. And the second 2 amendments are just adjusting the date for when each of these goals should be achieved, because we find it more realistic, or it fits better with what we actually want to do. And that's it for these amendments. And now I'm just going to mention quickly what you should do if you want to make an amendment. So until the 22nd of July, you can make your comments directly in these documents. So if you enter the document, you will have what is it called? Not editing rights, but like suggesting rights or something like that. So you can just, whatever you want to change, you can make a suggestion, you can write comments. And this will be public, so everyone will be able to see your comments, and we will reply to them. And we will say like, okay, we will change as you suggested, or we will not change as you suggested, and so on. Or if you don't want to write publicly, you can also email us with whatever you want. All right, I think it's quite straightforward. And after the 27th of July, yeah, you can use the amendment form. So the same as I used to amend the strategic plan and the TNHRT regulations. Who you are, if you have a position, for example, if you are a NORP or a LORP or something else, which NMO you come from. And then you mention which document this is relevant for. And then if it's something that you want to change, so you want to change one sentence from something to something else, and you write the original text here and your proposed changes here. And then you write an explanation for why you want to suggest this change. And try to write an as elaborate explanation as possible, because this is what will be shared with the members. And if it's elaborate, then there is a bigger chance that people will agree with you. All right, that's all for the amendment process. Any questions? All right. So the last thing before the question and answer part, which you can kind of start now because I know the YouTube is a couple of seconds behind us when we talk in real life. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them now. And I'm just going to run through the voting process. So for the people who are at the GA, we will have a session for voting. And we would want one person from each NMO. And also, if there are NMOs who are present at the GA, but not in SCORP sessions, so for example, the NORP is not present, but the president is there and someone else is there, then they are also more than welcome to come to SCORP sessions just for the voting session and represent the NMO. And if not, then there will be online voting. And you will receive, so the NORP will receive this form, and it will be a bit more complete. and you will fill it out. It won't be anonymous because we want to make sure that we are getting the right votes. Kind of. And so it goes. And then this is just an example because I don't know what amendments will be submitted and so on. So motion 1 is to accept the amendment for SCORP regulations. Let's see if we start with SCORP regulations, and then you can vote in favor, against, or to abstain. And then the second motion, and it's a bit complicated because we won't know the results of anything until everything is done. So we just have to be open for all the different possibilities. So motion number 2 is to accept the SCORP regulations, so the regulations themselves as proposed by the SCORP International team. Then you can be in favor, against, abstain, or you can say that if motion 1 passes, then I am in favor of motion 2. If motion 1 doesn't pass, then I'm not in favor of motion number 2, or the other way around. And then you choose the last option, which is in favor only if motion 1 passes / fails. And if you choose this, then we will be able to see, of course, if you chose in favor or against for motion number 1. So if you're in favor for motion number 1, then we will assume that you accept motion number 2 if motion number 1 passes. If you're against motion number 1 and chooses in favor only if it passes / fails for motion number 2, then we will assume that you are in favor of motion number 2 if motion number 1 fails. Was that clear or was that very confusing? And if there are more amendments, then it will be like in favor only if motion number 1 passes, in favor / fails, in favor only if motion number 2 passes / fails, in favor only if motion number 1 and 2 passes and / fails, and so on and so forth. And is it clear? I hope it's clear. We will explain this in written form as well. So we will explain this in an email to the NORCs. All right, that's actually all I have to say, I think. So if you don't have any questions, which I cannot see so far, we are pretty much done. If you have questions, you still have some more seconds to ask them. Also, if you have any questions related to the General Assembly itself, you can ask them since we are here, so why not? And Ghana and Jose, do you have anything else you want to add?
No.
Nothing from me.
And nothing from me.
Just looking forward to see you up in Arusha.
Me too.
So awesome. So I'm just gonna wait some more seconds for YouTube to catch up with us, but I think we are pretty much done. Thank you, Ghana and Jose, for being here. And thank you everyone who watched for watching. And thank you for being involved in SCORP and stuff, etc. And I will see you soon again. I think this is goodbye. I think we can go off there. Of course, if you have any questions later, you can always email me, scorpd@ifmsa.org. Jose, should we go off there?